Hey guys, Andrea, welcome back to the channel. So guys, as you would have seen over on TikTok and on my shorts, I've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole that I've been interested in for years when I was studying natural health, and it's sick building syndrome or sick person syndrome. And so, sick building syndrome is basically when your building or living space that you're living or working in is physically making you sick due to a combination of environmental factors, poor ventilation and cleaning methods, and potentially poor maintenance and the building materials used. Commonly found irritants that are culprit of sick building syndrome is mold, fungi, and then organic volatile compounds and volatile inorganic compounds as well as building materials. In Australia, building with asbestos is now illegal, gyprock is highly regulated, and manufactured stone benches are highly registered as well as, particularly in Queensland, we have a contaminated land register, so you can know if that land was used for industrial purposes, compounding, medication purposes before it was turned into a residential area as well. The most famous case of sick building syndrome in Australia is actually the ABC cancer cluster back in 2008. So the ABC had been broadcasting out of a Toowong facility. Now we're using analog broadcasting equipment. There was a substantial number of women, I think it was 16 to 18 women, that got diagnosed with breast cancer. Then there was 2 men that also had brain tumours. That was decided that the ABC Toowong site literally had to be shut down. The state and federal government announced where it is now, which is in the cultural heartland of Brisbane, South Bank Entertainment Precinct, and they have also built with the future in mind. So on the online world and digital broadcasting equipment, they still have the analog equipment in emergency situations. They think it was a combination of the age of the buildings, the building materials, and electronic radiation exposure. So I hate to say it, but the crunchy mums are right that our technologies addictions are making us not only emotionally sick, but physically sick. So guys, there's only one way to stop it. It's for a great amount of time each day, getting physically outside away from your devices as well. And I do know there's great things like phone jails, lock boxes, and even now there's lock boxes that become Faraday cages as well. So they've got the copper mesh embedded into the phone jails as well. But not recommended if you have a seizure disorder or any other chronic condition that you need to be able to contact emergency services, a support worker, caregiver, or family member in case of an emergency or a non-emergent medical episode about to come on. But guys, Dr. Jordan Peterson's latest podcast explores sick building syndrome. He's talked to Scott McCaughan and Dr. Richie Shoemaker. They've developed a visual acuity test that works with shades of grey to work out if it is sick building syndrome as well. So they believe and are researching links into gut and brain health and believe that some mental illnesses do have a physiological cause, because we know exposure to some types of mold, particularly black mold, have a really big impact on brain fog, cognition, thinking. So it makes sense as well, because we're now, as scientists and physicians, learning a lot more about human anatomy and the body, and so things like gut permeability, which back in 2008 and 2016, naturopaths, integrated medicine practitioners, functional medicine practitioners were talking about, and it was dismissed by the medical community. Then there was a test developed for SIBO, which is the bacteria that is responsible for causing Helicobacter, which can create gut ulcers. We now have the HP7 protocol for that one as well. And so we have the breath test, and they're looking at the environmental links to that as well. In Australia, we have the Environmental Protection Agency, and there is labs that are based in Brisbane that can also do mould and fungi exposure testing. But the other thing we forget about is our cleaning methods and what needs to be cleaned regularly. So, guys, and this is particularly for people with a disability, is shower chairs and hoists need to be put out in sun regularly. Sunlight is the best disinfectant we have as well. Looking at your support workers or yourself, if you do your own cleaning, using PPE, so that's your gloves, mask, eyewear. If you're using things like bleach, having your exhaust fans on. If you're in an air-conditioned building, checking that the owner or yourself is regularly servicing it and getting the filters clean, because ducted air conditioning is one of the biggest mold causes as well. And as well as cleaning up spills, making sure your carpet's vacuumed regularly with a HEPA filter. So that's a deep cleaning with a plug-in vacuum cleaner rather than a stick vac at least once a month as well. Opening a window once in a while instead of using the aircon, getting that fresh air through. I know in big cities, Sydney, Melbourne, can be harder to do because then we get into volatile organic compounds, so your things that you can't avoid, your smog, your city pollution, so your things from car exhaust. And we're talking about greener futures, but we need to balance that out with that electric cars take longer and are harsher on the environment to manufacture. They can't go as long. So looking at greener cities involves integrating public transport with walkability. Because if you're a person with a disability who's an ambulatory wheelchair user, uses a walkability aid, has chronic fatigue, walking is not going to be practical, but taking public transport, especially if you can't drive, is going to be much more practical. And also, as well, where possible, I know some SIL houses and disability service facilities and hospital facilities do need to use certain chemical products, but there is definite links between mold exposure and biotoxin exposures to what we all know about now due to COVID, the cytokine storms. So that is when the body is overreacting to bugs, viruses, bacteria in the environment and making yourself sicker as well. And we also have more reporting of environmentally based illnesses. So there is also now definite direct links between sick building syndrome and some chronic illnesses that are linked to mold and fungi exposure as well. And one of those is multiple chemical sensitivity syndrome. So the Crunchy Mums actually have it right. What we're putting into our body is actually affecting our physical and mental health. But guys, unless you want to go full crunchy, which is a polite term on the internet for exiting out of the matrix, and yes, I am talking around the corners to avoid demonetization in the future, we need to be mindful that everything is made up of chemicals, and not all chemicals are harmful. Like, not everything that's natural is not harmful. I remember saying in pharmacy two phrases all the time when I was working at a late night pharmacy is, first one, totally unrelated, is the metric mouthful is not a valid measurement, especially when I'm talking to parents about painkillers and things like that for their teenage children, that you have to have a proper dosing measure because a kitchen teaspoon isn't actually a standard scientific measurement. So guys, check out Hank Green's channel about standard scientific management standard scientific notation as well. Khan Academy, as a side note, has a great course on basic science and physics if you want to learn about standard scientific measurement as well. And then the other one I used to say all the time is just because it's natural doesn't mean it's safe. I would see so many people harming themselves through natural cures. So, guys, clove oil does not kill mold. You need to get it professionally cleaned as well. So, clove oil will help in the initial cleaning, but it is not going to kill the spores that are living in your environment and breathing. So then the other things to check out, especially if you have kids with behavioural management problems that they don't fit the criteria for autism spectrum disorder, or when you do a brain scan for ADHD, don't fit the brain profile for ADHD, having a look at things like lead paint, water damage, lack of filtration, their diet. So are they eating a processed food diet, so the standard Western diet, or are you encouraging them to eat healthy? And I know sometimes fed is best. I know I'm like that as well. But looking at how you are managing things in your household around stress as well, because then the other one is stress. And stress and autoimmune disorders are very well documented, particularly because autoimmune disorders are more common in women, because women traditionally have been harder to study or outright neglected by the medical community because of our hormonal profiles. So if our hormones aren't balanced, it's harder to study medical conditions in females. So therefore, it is disproportionately harder to do medical-based double-blind studies because hormones, cycles, pregnancy are all things that happen in the female species that don't happen in the male species, so they cannot account for those variables. This is something that they also consider in sick building syndrome is fertility. So, and it's interesting that sick building syndrome happens more often in new builds rather than older builds, because older builds are generally built with thicker materials, with materials to last in time, and they don't use paints with mold retardants as well. And I know Australia was a world first leader in getting rid of lead paint, lead in gasoline as well, because we have a long-term study in Mount Isa about the effect of lead poisoning in children as well, and the effects of coal dust in mining town. So a lot of the mining companies have giving back programs where houses are cleaned and there is forest restoration done to those areas as well. So your hygiene is incredibly important in a building, and so if you have access to a care scheme, this is where you can work with a support worker or a commercial cleaner to get your place livable and hygienic as well. So the other places we forget that mold can grow is in the fridge and in our taps as well. In Australia, we have standards around drinking water as well. And this is, when I was researching this video and podcast, guys, I actually learnt that this is why we can't drink straight tap water, because people don't look after their roofs. So what is then breathing in those tanks? And so this is why they say to boil tank water if you're going to use it in the household. I grew up on tank water, but I remember my parents being pedantic about our roofs as well. We didn't have access to mains either. To this day, there is no access to mains and town water as well. So, guys, it is a really interesting rabbit hole to go down, and particularly the ABC and the state government's response to the cancer cluster brought sick building syndrome out of fringe medicine, holistic medicine, natural scientists into the mainstream of that this is very real and we need to take it very seriously. So using things like air filtration system, adequate cleaning, getting your air conditioning serviced, as well as reporting symptoms. If you're in a rental, making sure that maintenance is taken care of, because that dripping tap could be dripping into the drywall, creating problems down the road. And making sure that buildings are watertight is huge as well. So, guys, it's interesting that our environments can make ourselves sick. So I'm deliberately, even though we're in the middle of a heat wave in Australia, getting out during the evening to into the green space. I'm lucky enough to have green space in the housing facility that I am in. You might have seen me recording in there as well. But also the other one is RDF radiation. And there is now blockers you can get as well. But minimizing use of electronics is a really, really big one there as well. And so you're probably thinking, how do I minimize my usage? Well, getting outside, reading physical books, having my electronics confiscated at night as well. But we do live in the digital age, and I understand not everyone can do it as well. But guys, let's have a think and drop it in the comments if you guys have ever been in a sick building and what have you guys felt when you got out of that environment workspace as well, because it's not only the physical building, it can be the emotional stress of being in a sick building, it can be the emotional stress of the colleagues having brain fog as well, which brain fog is a whole other topic that Dr. Peterson talked about with Dr. Scott Mahon and Richie Shoemaker as well, because they go into the causes of brain fog and that it's not all in your head, that it is very real, that it can have a natural organic cause. And so this gives me hope that the people that are on the cutting edge of science, that are ethical and standing up for what is true and what is right in the scientific community, standing up for truth, are being listened to and able to build the next scientific toolkit. So, guys, I know this is a longer one. Thank you for listening to my absolute passion. As you can hear, I do have a background in community pharmacy as well. So, guys, as always, if you can like, share, and subscribe and comment, that really does help the channel grow. Let's get out the word about sick building syndrome, because I know particularly in America, you guys don't have the standards for building that we do in Australia. Australia can be a bit of a nanny state, but government regulation with building is the only way to prevent sick building syndrome. I'll see you guys in the next video.